Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel where we do painting tutorials. I've taped down my paper with some masking tape and I start by adding a droplet of water onto my paints so they can activate and they're nice and saturated. I start by mixing a base puddle with some Azu Yellow Deep, which is my warm yellow color. Feel free to substitute for any similar shades such as cadmium yellow or even some yellow ochre. Then I add a smidge of indigo blue, which is a very dark, deep, intense blue, and also a bit of Payne's gray, which is dark gray as the name suggests. You can also replicate these paintings with watercolor pencils, which is what I normally use on my channel, by using a scrap piece of paper and mixing said colors, so a dark blue, a warm yellow, and a bit of black. You may want to use a more orangey yellow to neutralize the blue further. Then I just start applying my paint mix left to right, right to left. My background for the left side of my sketchbook is dry, so I'm just going for a rather flat wash here. But still, if you get any variations like a bit darker and another bit lighter, that's perfectly fine. Once I have everything covered up, I clean my brush in my water jar that by now is rather dark, and I use some not so clean water. On the right side of my sketchbook, I just cover that side entirely, and then I add random bits of color from that puddle mix I did with the yellow, the blue, and the gray. I'm just applying it rather randomly, and I'm going to leave the wet background to diffuse it on its own. So we have a flat wash on the left side and wet on the right side. It's just two different watercolor techniques you can use to achieve different effects. Once the backgrounds have dried, I take again my puddle, and if your puddle dries, just add more water to it and it's gonna reactivate. So I take that same mix and I'm very randomly tapping on top of each of the tree trunks I have sketched out with a normal pencil, just very randomly tapping over them. Nothing fancy, nothing special, just literally random blobs of color right there. I add a bit more of the Payne's gray to the mix to further darken it up for the tree trunks, and I paint those just with the tip of the brush. That's how you get nice straight lines and fine details with warm media. And if drawing is not your thing, there are going to be traceables to both of these paintings over at my Patreon page, Sunshine Arts, where we also do full-time paint along with me kind of videos. And if you are a patron and you want to use the traceable, I do suggest tracing it with a watercolor pencil or a water-soluble graphite pencil. That way, once you paint over with watercolors, because they are transparent, good quality watercolors are typically transparent unless stated otherwise, you won't see the lines. They're going to just dissolve as you paint, and it's a very neat little trick. So if you have some watercolor pencils, just pick a dark blue or a ultramarine blue or something similar to the shades you're using, and it's just going to blend as you paint. So yeah, if you choose to first support me and the channel, there's going to be a link to my Patreon page down in the description box, along with all of the supplies I have used throughout this video. Now once the foliage has dried up a bit, I take a bit more Payne's gray to my mix, and I'm just adding it on the bottom side of the tree crowns, and also I'm going to go on top of some tree trunks with it to further darken them up. Keep in mind that using very little water is ideal to get fine lines such as the tree trunks. If you have a lot of water on your brush, you're going to end up with bigger blobs of paint. They're going to look similar to what we used for the foliage, and you won't want that for your tree trunks. Then again, a bit more of that Payne's gray and that mix we did in the beginning, and I'm just going to paint the ground with it. Then I get more of my mix, just that mix, and I'm going to paint a mountain on the right side. I'm just following that edge from my initial sketch, and then I bring it downwards. I blend it out with water. While that dries, I take some white opaque watercolors. Alternatively, feel free to use wash, acrylics, a white marker, whatever you have. Some people even use white correction pens, a bit of water, and then I just tap on my brush's handle to create stars upon the sky. Meanwhile, my mountain has dried, so again I take some of the mix and a bit of Payne's gray and I do a second mountain that is darker than the first one. This does not have to be perfect, don't stress about making a perfect edge because we are going to have trees on top of it, they're going to hide most of the mountain. So clean the brush, get more of the mix, get a good amount of Payne's gray or indigo or whichever is your darkest color. And I actually start from the bottom of the tree right here because I had a good amount of water on my brush. Like I said, if you have a good amount of water, you're going to get big blobs of color, but I needed a fine line for the point of the tree, so I start from the bottom. That way I use up the water and the color I have instead of wasting it by tapping on a napkin. And once I have consumed a good amount of it, I go back and I paint the tree top. I hope that made sense. If you're a beginner, you may want to just dry your brush very slightly, the part that is closer to the handle, not the actual tip, on a piece of napkin, and then you start painting your tree from the top towards the bottom. Like I did here for my second one, which I had a bit more control over because I had not dipped my brush into the water jar. And for the actual trees, I'm literally just doing some random tapping motions. My hands are a bit shaky, so I use that to my advantage to make the randomest of shapes here. I just go with my hand shakiness, and that's how I paint trees. Then I found this button in my drawer that's on top of my desk, and I thought, why don't I trace it? So I just traced that little button. I don't know what it's from. If not, just use a coin. Then I go back to that white watercolor I used on the right side and I paint a little crescent moon right there. Feel free to tilt your paper, your watercolor pad, your sketchbook to whatever angle feels comfortable so you can reach it. I thought I add some stars. If you get white splashes upon an area you don't want to have white splashes, like for example your trees, just go on top with a napkin or piece of toilet paper. Then I'm going to define the crescent moon a bit better on the edges. I just proceed slowly, peel off the tape in the opposite direction, and that is it. I'd like to give a very special thank you to my Patreon supporters for the month of October, and thank you all for watching. If you found any value in this video, please let me know by liking, commenting. If you have not already, please consider subscribing to my channel, it really helps with the algorithm. And we'll see each other in the next video. Bye bye!